Malaysia's Pakatan Harapan government will mark its first anniversary in power on Thursday. If you saw it coming a year ago, after all, the former ruling Barisan Nasional had a tight grip on power for over half a century.
But Pakatan Harapan defied the odds in what came to be dubbed the Malaysian tsunami, thanks to voters' unhappiness with the rising cost of living, the 1MDB scandal and other issues. The coalition was led by a former leader of Barisan Nasional.
That, of course, was Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, who had already been Prime Minister once before. He promised political reform during his second stint.
We are not seeking revenge. What we want to do is to restore the rule of law.
This was the state of play at the federal parliament after the election. Pakatan Harapan with 121 seats, and 1 year later that number has risen to 139.
But that is mainly because of defections from other parties, and concerns, well, they are mounting. Pakatan Harapan has performed poorly in recent by-elections, losing 3 consecutive fights to Barisan Nasional.
And observers say the initial euphoria could be wearing off. Now let's have more of a discussion on this with Johan joins us now. Johan, tell us, losing 3 by-elections in a year, how concerned should the Pakatan Harapan government really be?
I think they should be quite concerned. But there is one more by-election coming up in Sandakan, and by all accounts, the Pakatan should do better in this one. It's the incumbent. Now, of the 7 by-elections, 7 by-elections have been held. 3 were lost, and these were actually lost to incumbents. So you could say that Pakatan hasn't really lost any seat as yet. So on that score, it looks okay. But however, if you examine the numbers carefully, the slippage is very, very clear. I did some calculations. It was something like 5 to 6% in the Semenya by-elections. And in the most recent by-election in Rantau, the Pakatan Harapan candidate could only win 1 of the polling districts. So that's not very good news.
Johan, there was always going to be huge pressure on the Pakatan Harapan government to realize, to effect change after 6 decades, after all, with Barisan Nasional rule. 1 year on, have they delivered on their promises?
Well, there are the things that have been delivered and a whole lot that haven't been delivered as well. So, you know, like any new government, there's a lot on the plate. They delivered on the most immediate things, like they got rid of the, the GST and so on. They have introduced a number of laws. They have they've fallen back on some of the laws that they wanted to sort of get rid of, like the Sedition Act. So there are the good, the bad, and the ugly things that have occurred. And by and large, I think it's on balance. I would say they have, for 1 year, to take it at 1 year's performance hasn't been all that bad. But the latest numbers that comes from Merdeka Center shows that Mahathir's own popularity has slipped quite significantly from 71% to 46%. And generally people think that the government is not going in the right direction. About 39% only think that it's going in the right direction. So there are a lot of things for the government to take care of.
Yeah, those numbers are not encouraging for Dr. Mahathir. How do you sort of think about his stewardship then as Prime Minister, with his relationship with the Prime Minister in waiting, Anwar Ibrahim? Does this relationship work? How is that sort of viewed by Malaysians, as they were, their history goes back quite a few, or decades in fact, and they weren't always the best of friends?
Yes, it's been there, this sort of the question of whether Anwar is ready to take over. But he won the by-election in Port Dickson, and he has actually made himself fairly prominent, but without, impinging on the work of the current government. And don't forget that, there is the whole insurance policy, let's call it, of Anwar's wife, Wan Azizah, who's the Deputy Prime Minister. So from that perspective, I would say that, the scenario where Anwar will take over as Prime Minister remains fairly constant. I mean, that's the one that people expect to happen. Mahathir, however, does have quite a few things on his plate. There's the whole question of the royal insurgents that's sort of causing considerable tension in politics. But we've seen how the government has been able to overcome, for example, the most recent problem, and that's the choice of the Chief Justice. That has gone through. So by and large, things are a little bit choppy here and there, but I think still on an even keel.
Johan, what about the fortunes of Barisan Nasional? It's had some defections, but it's also done well in by-elections, so it's not quite a spent force, is it?
No, actually it is very important to note that there is a new sort of alliance between PAS and UMNO, and that I think has been a very significant alliance, a very powerful one, in that it has been able to mobilize a lot of discontent among Malays, particularly among Malay youth. Now, apparently I've been told that the PAS can command a considerable support from Malay youth, and they have shown it in the by-elections. So that is a major factor that for the Pakatan to worry about, and it actually shows that the Barisan Nasional plus PAS and possibly other parties as well can in future possibly even form a new coalition to be a challenge to the Pakatan Harapan.
Johan, thank you very much for that perspective. We've been speaking there to Dr. Johan Saravanamuttu. He is Adjunct Senior Fellow at the Rajaratnam School of International Studies.